Why are you even here? My son snapped across the dinner table. You're not my real mother anyway. The words hit me like cold water thrown directly in my face. Every conversation in that room stopped instantly. Forks went still. Glasses stayed half-raised. And I stood there holding a serving spoon while 16 years of love collapsed into 7 words. I looked at my husband. He stared at his plate. Nobody defended me. Not one person at that table said a single word in my direction. His aunts studied the tablecloth. His cousins suddenly found their food extremely interesting. And my son, my boy, the child I had rocked through fevers and nightmares and first-day jitters, looked right through me like I was a stranger who had wandered into the wrong house. I set the spoon down carefully. My hand was trembling. But what happened next destroyed the lie they had built for years. My name is Danielle Carter. I'm 36 years old. I work 12-hour shifts as a pediatric nurse, caring for other people's sick children while running on cold coffee and borrowed energy. I come home exhausted most nights, cook dinner, help with homework, and try to hold everything together with quiet, steady hands. I started raising my son when he was barely 2 years old. His biological mother, a woman named Renee, had already begun disappearing by then. Not all at once. First it was missed weekends. Then missed months. Then a forwarding address that went nowhere and a phone number that rang and rang until it didn't even ring anymore. My husband Nathan and I had been together for 3 years when I stepped fully into that role. Nobody asked me to. Nobody sat me down and said, Danielle, this child needs you. I just looked at this little boy with his untied shoes and his confused eyes and I thought, somebody has to stay. So I did. But staying, I learned, was never going to be enough for Nathan's family. His mother never called me anything warm. His sister Claire treated me like a babysitter, who had somehow ended up at the permanent address. Every holiday, every birthday, every casual Sunday dinner carried this quiet current of rejection. I could feel it in how they spoke around me rather than to me. In how they praised Renee's eyes whenever my son walked into the room. In how they kept old photographs of her displayed in places I had to walk past. I wasn't rich. I wasn't glamorous. I didn't have a dramatic past that made for interesting stories at the dinner table. But I had something they never expected from a woman like me. I had patience that went deeper than pride. And I had documentation of every single thing that had ever happened to that child since the day his mother stopped showing up. If you've ever given everything you had to people who treated your love like a placeholder, then you already know what the air in that family felt like for me. It's a specific kind of loneliness. Not the kind where you're alone in a room. The kind where you're surrounded by people who have quietly decided you don't quite count. I kept showing up anyway. Because my son counted. He always counted. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration. 16 candles. His favorite lasagna. I had spent 3 weeks tracking down a vintage jersey from his favorite basketball era. Something I knew he had mentioned exactly once in passing 6 months earlier, because that's the kind of listening I did. That's the kind of mother I was. Nathan's sister Claire arrived late and loud, the way she always did, trailing the smell of her heavy perfume, and carrying opinions nobody had asked for. She set her bag down, kissed Nathan on the cheek, barely glanced at me, and within 20 minutes had steered the conversation exactly where she wanted it. He has Renee's laugh, you know, she said to the table. Not to me. To the table. Identical. It's actually beautiful to see. My son looked up. He was watching Claire the way teenagers watch adults who make them feel like they matter. I saw it happening. I had seen this particular performance before. But I had no idea how far she had already taken it behind closed doors. Things shifted fast after that. Voices dropped. Eyes moved. And then my son's face changed into something I didn't recognize. Hard. Certain. Like someone had handed him a script he had been quietly rehearsing. You lied to me my whole life, he said. His voice cracked slightly on the word lied, but his jaw was set. Sweetheart, I never hid the truth from you, I said. My voice stayed level. I had practiced staying level for years. Maybe my real mom would have understood me better. He said it directly, flatly, like a door closing. I looked at Nathan. This was the moment a husband steps in. This was the moment a partner says, hey, that's not okay. Nathan looked at his water glass. I pushed the wrapped jersey toward my son across the table. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he pushed it back without opening it. Claire watched this with her hands folded in her lap, and the smallest satisfied curve at the corner of her mouth. Later, I was standing in the kitchen alone, and I heard Claire's voice from the hallway, low and certain, talking to one of the older relatives. She didn't know I was there. Or maybe she didn't care. I've been telling him the truth for 2 years, she said. Someone had to. I stood very still. The refrigerator hummed. The sound of it was the only thing keeping me grounded in that moment. This ordinary mechanical sound in the middle of something that was breaking me open. I didn't move. I listened. And I understood everything. After that night, my son stopped speaking to me at home in any real way. Single syllables. Closed doors. Headphones on before I finished a sentence. I told myself it was normal teenage behavior. I told myself he needed time. But I knew what I was watching. I was watching a 16-year-old boy be slowly taught to see me as the enemy, by someone who had access to him in ways I couldn't monitor. Nathan allowed his relatives to stop inviting me to things. It's easier, he said. Less drama for everyone. Less drama. I had created no drama. I had swallowed drama for 16 years and asked for nothing in return. Then I found out Claire had posted something online, suggesting I had emotionally manipulated my son as a way to keep Nathan from reconnecting with Renee. People who didn't know me, relatives I had met twice, were leaving comments agreeing with her. I kept going to work. I kept coming home. I kept making dinner for a family that had decided I was the villain in a story I had actually spent years trying to protect them from. What I did not do was panic. Because I had something they had forgotten about. What they didn't know was that I had saved every message, every voicemail, every hospital record. I had kept everything. Not out of suspicion, not originally. I had kept things the way careful people keep things, because I was the one managing appointments and insurance forms and school documents while everyone else was busy performing family. But somewhere along the way, I had also started keeping other things. Screenshots of messages Claire had sent me over the years. Voicemails from Renee that explained, in her own voice, why she was choosing not to come back. And recordings. Not hidden recordings planted in rooms. Recordings of conversations that happened near me, on speaker, when people forgot I was in the next room. I had recordings of Claire telling my son things no adult should say to a child about the woman raising him. I had the custody documents Renee had signed. Every page. Every signature. I had held on to all of it because I hoped, genuinely, that I would never need to use it. I had protected this family's story for years because I believed my son deserved to grow up without the weight of those details. But I had been wrong about what protecting him actually required. A few days after the dinner, I received a phone call from an unfamiliar number. The man on the other end introduced himself as Gerald Whitmore. He was a retired family attorney. He had handled paperwork years earlier connected to Nathan's family, and he had heard, through someone who knew someone, what had happened at my son's birthday dinner. He said he wanted to talk. I met him at a small coffee shop 2 miles from my house. He was in his 70s, quiet and precise, with the kind of stillness that comes from decades of knowing when words matter. He slid a folder across the table toward me. I handled the legal work when Renee signed over her parental rights, he said. Voluntarily. Completely of her own decision. No pressure. No coercion. She was asked multiple times if she was certain. I already knew this. But hearing it from him, with documents, felt different. What I also know, he continued, is that Claire has been in contact with Renee for the past 2 years. She has been feeding information to your son specifically designed to make him believe the situation was different from what it was. The coffee in front of me went cold while he talked. He offered to make himself available. Formally. Officially. Whatever I needed. I drove home and sat in my car for a long time. The neighborhood was quiet. The streetlights had come on. I could see the light in my son's bedroom window. I had one decision left to make. Nathan's family gathered the following Sunday under the impression that I had asked everyone over to say goodbye. Claire had apparently told a few people she expected me to announce I was leaving. She arrived looking almost cheerful. My son sat on the couch with his arms crossed, not looking at me. He said, "You can stop pretending now." Cold. Rehearsed. I said. I'm not pretending. I never was. Then I placed a stack of folders on the coffee table. The room shifted. Gerald Whitmore walked in from the hallway. Nathan's face went completely still. Claire's smile disappeared. Gerald spoke first. He explained who he was. He explained what the documents in front of them confirmed. He explained that Renee had signed away her parental rights voluntarily when my son was 3 years old, and had made no legal attempt to restore them in the 13 years since. Claire started to say something. I pressed play on my phone. Her own voice filled the room. She'll never really be your mother. Silence. Then another clip. Make her feel unwanted. She'll leave eventually. That's what women like her do. My son's face changed. Something behind his eyes broke open slowly, the way ice cracks before it falls. Nathan stood up. His hands were shaking. Claire. Just her name. But the way he said it carried everything. Claire tried. She said she was protecting the family. She said Renee deserved to be remembered. She said I had never fit in, and everyone knew it. Nathan cut her off. He laid the emails Gerald had brought onto the table, emails between Claire and Renee spanning 2 years, coordinating what to say to my son and when to say it. My son was crying by then. Not politely. Deeply. The kind of crying that sounds like something finally breaking loose after being held too long. I sat down next to him. Gerald had also brought something else. Copies of hospital records from when my son was 4. A serious illness. 3 days in intensive care. I had stayed every single night. Renee had been contacted and had not come. There was a note in the file documenting the attempted contact. Her response had been that she couldn't make the trip. My son read that page twice. You stayed, he said. He wasn't asking. He was understanding something for the first time. I stayed, I said. I was always going to stay. He said he was sorry. Not once. Multiple times, in different ways, like he was trying to find the version that fit what he actually meant. I told him the truth. I told him those words at the dinner table had shattered something in me. I told him I had almost left 3 weeks earlier. I had packed a bag. I had sat with it by the door for 2 hours. But I had thought about him knowing the truth someday, and not having me there when he did. That thought was the only thing that made me unpack. You stayed when everyone else walked away, he said. Because you're my son, I said. That part was never complicated. The room was quiet for a long time after that. The kind of quiet that comes after years of noise finally stop. Claire left without speaking. 2 relatives followed her out. The rest sat with what they had just witnessed, and none of them looked comfortable, which was exactly right. Things did not become perfect after that day. Healing is not a switch. My son and I rebuilt slowly. He started saying Mom again, not as a statement, but naturally, the way you say a word you've always known. Nathan began therapy. He acknowledged, openly and painfully, that his silence had been its own kind of betrayal. Claire became someone the family stopped inviting to things. She had made her choices loudly, and they had echoed. I stopped waiting for the approval I had been chasing for 16 years. Something shifted in me that Sunday afternoon. I understood, finally and completely, that my worth had never depended on whether Nathan's family chose to see it. I had always been enough. I had just been looking in the wrong direction for confirmation. I still work my long shifts. I still come home tired. But the house feels different now. Quieter in the right ways. Warmer in the ways that count. My son left a note on the kitchen counter last month. 3 sentences. He is not an emotional writer. He gets that from Nathan. But those 3 sentences said everything I had needed to hear for 16 years. And I have kept the note in the same way I kept all the other documents. Because some things are worth holding on to. Love isn't the blood you share. It's the person who stays when staying hurts the most. If someone in your life has ever made you feel unwanted inside your own family, you already know exactly what that weight feels like. You know the specific exhaustion of giving love that goes unacknowledged. Has someone ever questioned your love or twisted your intentions to serve their own story? I'd really like to hear from you in the comments below. Share what happened. You are not alone in this. Subscribe if this story reached something real in you. And click hype to help it reach someone else who might need to hear it today. Your story has power. If you felt a connection to mine, please subscribe and share your journey in the comments. Every hype you give this video helps empower someone else. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening.